So we're going to walk through the settings for a quiz in Moodle. There are essentially two steps for setting up a quiz. The first one is setting up the shell, and the second one is setting up the questions. And when you set up the shell, you can actually use that as a template for other quizzes or exams. So you can set up your basic structure and not add questions to it initially. And then you can hide that or just use that as a template and then duplicate that. And then in the future, change the name, timing, stuff like that, and then add questions to it. So to get started, we're going to add a quiz. And we'll just call this a sample quiz. You can put any kind of description you want in there, and then decide whether you want it to display on the page or not. The timing becomes important when you are having students take the quiz itself and you want them to see results. So when we get down to the review options, if you don't have it close at a certain time, then you'll set review options, which allows them to review the quiz itself or see points. You'll have to set those options in a different location. A lot of people will actually use this for timed quizzes, so you can have this open and close at a certain time. You can also have a time limit, but something to keep in mind is that if you have students with extra time, you want to make sure that your open and close time allow for that. So if you have it open at 10 and close at 11 and give them an hour, but you have a student who gets time and a half, then they won't be able to take that. They'll get cut off as well. So you want to give them a longer period of time. So a lot of people might give them a 4-hour block here, but once they start the quiz, they only have 60 minutes. That makes sense. Okay. The open attempts are submitted automatically. That's the default. I don't recommend changing that, but you can if you want. And I don't recommend using the submission grace period. That kind of messes up things. So under grade, if you have already set up your grade book, then you would have categories, and you could put this under quizzes, which I recommend, and you can view the gradebook video or documentation for that. If you want to allow more than one attempt, then you could do that here, and then it will give you the option to take the highest grade, or some of the other options here are average, first attempt, last attempt. The layout, the default is to put every question on a new page, but you can also change the way that looks. The default navigation method is free, which means students can go between questions. They can go forward and back. So if you want to have a little bit more security, you can set that to sequential so that they're forced to take the quiz in the order in which you put the questions. The question behavior, by default, it shuffles the questions. And deferred feedback is the default. So you don't want to change that unless you're going to get fancy and start doing things like immediate feedback, which requires more work on your part, but it does allow you to put things like immediate feedback, allow students to check their answers, retry a question. So if you're using this for practice, this could be a good thing to do. Here's the important thing you need to do when you're setting up your shell. A lot of faculty miss this, the review options. So by default, none of these are checked because we had to do the default that matched everyone. So you can't set anything under review options for during the attempt when you're doing deferred feedback, because no one can see anything while they're doing it. Immediately after the attempt means a student has finished taking the test or quiz and has hit submit, but time has not expired here, or this has not occurred or is not set. And it's essentially 2 minutes after they've finished. So if they navigate away from the page and come back, these will no longer be in play. Later, while the quiz is still open, means while other students are still taking the exam, the time limit may have expired for them, but the quiz is still open or this isn't set. After the quiz is closed means they can't see anything, they can't review the attempt or see points until that closed quiz time actually occurs. So if you do not use the closed quiz time, then you need to set all of your options under later while the quiz is still open. If you want them to be able to see their answers before other students finish, then you would use that as well. If you don't want anyone to be able to see anything until after everyone has finished and you're using the closed quiz time, then you'd use this after the quiz is closed. The other settings are pretty standard and most people don't change them. And unless you wanted to do activity completion. So then you hit save and display. That's how you get to the next section. So if you were just going to set this up as a shell, then you could stop and hit save and continue, or save and return to course, and that could be your shell course that you could use to copy and create duplicate quizzes. So now we have a shell here. To add questions, we're going to click on Edit Quiz. So to add questions, we click on Add, and there are multiple ways to add questions. And I'm going to go through this in another video, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview here. So here you can add a new question directly into the quiz, or you can pull from the question bank, or you can add a random question from the question bank. And in the next quiz, or in the next video, we're going to go through adding questions to the question bank and adding questions to the quiz itself.